So quite a while ago, in my mid-teens I guess, I was listening to Wild Love on the Shake Your Booty album, as the song suddenly went into this weird section, completely contrasting the rest of the song up to this point. That's pretty amazing, I thought. Later on I discovered that this was also part of a number called Sinister Footwear Movement 2. Again, many years later, I found out that Sinister Footwear 2 was the second movement of a 3-movement orchestra piece, and its first performance included huge puppets, and it was a financial disaster for the orchestra, going massively over budget. It was also the first big gig of a young Kent Nagano. Anyway, let's take a look at how Zappa composed Movement 2, which became a staple for all of Zappa's bands throughout the 80s. So the bulk of what this tune is results from a big series of chords of the opening 48 bars. Listen to how the lowest note is moving. As you've probably noticed, the bass is constantly descending via semitone, with a couple of exceptions, like the 8th chord going to the 9th chord retains the bass note, and at the end there's also a minor third. The top row of chords isn't played plain like this, it's arpeggiated in a certain way. And these 8 chords are actually 4 chord pairs, as each pair shares the same bottom 2 notes. I guess you could call that double pedal note harmony. The lowest 2 notes happen to be a minor third throughout, descending via semitone from chord pair to chord pair. The next section is characterized by a certain rhythm, starting with 2 staccato quarter notes followed by a half note. Each of these chords lasts 4 bars. After that comes what I'll refer to as the Wild Love section. But what are these chords and how did they come about? Most of my understanding of Zappa's use of chords and scales is owed to the writings of Dr. Brett Clement. In Zappa's compositional output from the late 70s to early 80s, we can see a clear preference for a handful of scales, which he uses constantly to construct chords and melodies. These are the following, and they include all of the modes: diatonic scale, melodic minor, 2 scales called minor Lydian 1 and 2, minor Lydian is essentially Dorian with a sharp 4. Minor Lydian 2 is essentially melodic minor with a sharp 4. ML1 happens to be a mode of harmonic minor. ML2 happens to be a mode of harmonic major, but I'll refer to them as minor Lydian because that's what I'm used to. Finally, there's the octatonic scale, comprised of alternating half and whole tone steps. In case you don't know this kind of academic labeling, in musical set theory, pitches and intervals are labeled with numbers from 0 to 11. In this case, 0 refers to the note C, 1 is C sharp, D is 2, and so on. So 0-1 is the octatonic scale containing the notes C and C sharp, 0-2 contains C and D, 1-2 contains C sharp and D. And if you know 2 notes, you know them all because the scale is so repetitive. But with some of these 5-note voicings, it's difficult to tell which scale did he have in mind. Luckily for us, the answer to this question lies in the second half of this tune, which is preceded in the rock band versions by different solo vamps. So in the second half of the tune, all of these chords we saw earlier in the big table reappear T-2, transposed down a major second. So it's all a big sequence. One chord actually differs, and it's the second. All of these chords serve as the accompaniment for a long, non-repeating melody, sort of like a notated improvisation. Zappa is 100% consistent in sticking to whatever the designated scale is. The first half of the big sequence is characterized by two main ideas: scale runs, and secondly, common tones between scales which are sustained across modulations. Like in this example, where the common tone E between the octatonic, the B melodic minor and the C sharp melodic minor scale is sustained across all the modulations. Another example, the 7th degree of the C sharp melodic minor scale becomes the 2 of the B flat melodic minor scale. After the arpeggiated section, the scale run idea becomes less dominant, though it's still prevalent, and the idea of common tones becomes more pronounced as Zappa really bangs on about them in an accented way. For example, in this 8-fold repetition of the note G, which is a common tone between F minor and E Dorian. The 11th-fold repetition of the note F sharp, which is a common tone between E Dorian and C minor Lydian. We can also see a clear preference for a certain scale degree when landing on a sustained note after one of Zappa's phrases, at least when he's in a diatonic mode. It's the 2nd degree. So now that we know which scales Zappa should be using, in quote, let's go backwards in the tune and take a look at the Wild Love phrases and what he does here in particular, in detail. There are 4 of these phrases showing some of the typical Zappa characteristics. Quick odd tuplets, 16th note quintuplets in particular. There's frequent large interval leaps, mainly sevenths, often as part of a 4th stack. There's the trademark repeated notes, something called melodic contour retention, a term probably originating from Dr. Brett Clement. All of these phrases end in a long note, maintaining the balance of tension and relief, and all of the phrases contain a certain amount of aberrant notes, chromatic alterations. Over this F sharp minor 11 chord, I'd expect to see the Dorian scale, or maybe natural minor. It's hard to tell because the 6th degree is missing. But what Zappa does is start off with an emphasis on the sharp 4. I came up with a term for this method that Zappa employs called quality mix. It's when he alters certain scale degrees, like going back and forth between different qualities of the same scale degree, like he'll mix the sharp 4 with the perfect 4, or the minor 6 with the major 6, something we'll see more of later. So this first phrase contains a quality mix of the 4 and sharp 4, or flat 5 and 5, it's up to interpretation. There's a E augmented triad, F sharp minor upper structure with a tinge of Lydian. On beat 3 we have melodic contour retention, going up, down, down, up. You might think this is a coincidence, but Zappa does it all the time, so no. What follows is Zappa's beloved 4th stack, and the phrase ends on the 1st degree of the scale. The second Wild Love phrase is definitely the wildest of the bunch, with the lowest degree of scale adherence. So the underlying chord here is of the minor Lydian type we've seen before. It's D minor Lydian. And the first 4 notes are in fact in D minor Lydian, alluding to the opening initial notes of the first phrase, C, A, G sharp. But for the remainder of this phrase, we can actually throw the idea of any kind of scale out the window and consider some intervallic motivic ideas instead. First, there's this intervallic quasi-sequence thing going step down, major 7 up, step down, major 7 up, step down. What follows is a once repeated 4-note pentatonic motif, which in terms of D minor Lydian is about as outside as you could get, to use a jazz term. There's melodic contour retention, down, repeat, up, down. In Zappa's 3rd phrase, he returns to scale adherence. Over this kind of chord, it's a double 5th stack, I'd expect to see E Dorian, and in fact, it is. We can see all the scale notes in the first bar of this phrase, if you include the chord. The next bar contains a quality mix, with the sharp 4 and 4 Also the minor and major seventh. There's melodic contour retention, going up, repeat, down, up, and the sustained note is the 4. Phrase 4 shows the same chord voicing as in phrase 2, transposed down a major second. It's E minor Lydian. And this time we actually see the minor Lydian scale in the first 2 bars, but there's no 7th degree. There's a quality mix near the end of bar 2, containing both the minor and major 6, followed by a descending achromatic 4-note set displaced by octaves. The phrase ends on the 6th degree. The last thing to go over is the outro. Zappa definitely had a knack for finding the perfect chord to shift the mood as he goes into this D natural minor key, or B flat Lydian if you will. Following that is a 4-bar melody in C major, but it's harmonized in peculiar ways. It starts off with 2 diatonic chords, A flat major 7 sharp 4, and almost a kind of cluster chord with 4 sharps. The bass clearly rubs dissonantly against the first chord, but not against the second, where it just adds the 5th sharp. What follows in the next 3 bars is 8 chords in the treble clef, which are all of the major add 4 type. This major add 4 type was one of Zappa's favorite chords. Zappa uses all of its inversions here. The bass joins in after resting one measure, either adding a diatonic note or making it the minor Lydian chord quality we've seen previously. Zappa alternates between these diatonic and minor Lydian types by way of the bass note. Zappa then shifts melodically into a 5th stack idea, ending with F, G and C. The 5th stack is harmonized with a C sharp minor 11, which is perfectly diatonic, but then come different alternating chord types to harmonize the melody notes over a D pedal. We have the add 2 type, the major 7 types, and the add 4 types. The piece ends on a D Dorian sound.